Welcome to the lecture on globalization of the city. So, today we are going to talk about globalization and its influences in the way cities are being shaped, and we will talk about it in four major topics. First is to understand the major reasons for evolution of globalization, and we will then next we will go on to see how the process of evolution of globalization has happened in the past and how it is happening today. Then the third, we will go into the study of what is the global cities are, what are the major characteristics, and then later we will go on to see what it happens in the sites, what happens in the global sites, what are the characteristics of it. Okay, so let's proceed to the session. City is a process in space and time. So it is a process where a whole lot of activities, whole lot of things keeps happening in space and time at any given time. So it is, on one hand, it is a whole lot of individual and collective human actions coming together in play on the landscape, and on the other hand we will see the characteristics of the land itself, the topography, the rivers, the system of vegetation in it, and how they all come together to allow this human settlement evolution here. So also it is not just about that, it is also the people who are living here. So the people who are coming here, they come with certain ideas, they have a system of life, how do they live in forming settlements, that is there. And then there is also the economic forces which decide these, how the settlements are shaped. The economic forces actually decide how much actually goes into, how much resources goes into building these cities. So it is also the system of all this coming together, and they form how the cities are formed. So at any time, even as we speak, these processes are playing together at any time, and how one tends to study it. So how we study through this is the challenge. So I would like to bring this focus today on globalization of Indian cities. Here the cities are going through a tremendous change, which is happening in today's context, which is changing the ways. Unprecedented change is happening in which the cities have been built. Human settlements have always been influenced by flows of technology, capital, culture, cues from distant territories. The current increasing and intensified flows between countries of capital, goods, services, ideas, information, and people, producing cross border integration of number of economic, social, and cultural activities across very different geographies, are shaping cities in unprecedented ways. So in current advanced in knowledge economies of cities, transnational operations of globalization flows also bring in people, work culture, meaning, norms, and ethics, often peculiar to that of the locals where they operate. These global networked spaces often appear obscure for majority of the local, and they develop as encounter spaces of global entities in local areas of cities. These are hyper facilitated spaces occupying prime areas, developed in nexus with local industries, developers, heavily supported by the governments. So the information technologies have brought space dimensions closer than ever before. The time and space compression in the cities bring new possibilities of performing functions and day-to-day life. So going into the main discussions of this topic. So here we are going to talk about globalization as a major process shaping cities in current post economic liberalization period. Then we will talk about evolution of globalization of cities in Indian context. Then characteristics of post liberalization cities, how they have changed, and then we will talk about the current extreme systems of planning and designing cities or building cities of informal and formal systems, and how they have a role in urban design. So, this we will talk about in these evolving systems. So, in this first session we will talk about how the reasons for evolving globalization, the current globalization process. Let us take a broader look at how this is happening. So, one is the first is the macroeconomic situation. It is very important to understand the macroeconomic situation, how it influences the way cities are being built. So, here if we see the foreign direct investment as a key capital transforming sections of local economies, and the cities are trying to attract the multinational companies so that they can improve their tax collection and job opportunities in their local areas. So, this important activity of the attracting the multinational companies with the global capital onto the local areas is considered as a major flow which is happening now. And also in the condition of current economic functioning, we will see that the specific functioning of economies are kind of dispersed or kind of being dispersed across the globe to specific areas where those specializations are available. So, for example, if in earlier cars used to be produced only in a particular country or an area, is now changed into situation where various processes of car manufacturing are supported by producers from different parts of the world. So, the raw materials are collected from another country and they prepare steel somewhere, and the steel goes to another place, and then it gets processed and then it goes to another place, whereas the control of this entire process is done from a command center which is located in a global place, and it is this supported by information technology. This entire process are monitored and controlled. Therefore, this specialization being dispersed across the globe was not possible, have changed, and now it is totally this dispersal is happening in throughout the globe. So, if we also and also within the city regions, this spatial dispersion is also happening. Earlier the production activities used to happen within the cities, now they have kind of moved out of the inner areas of the cities to the peripheries and the regions. It is important to see how the economy has evolved or changed. In the current scenario, Indian economy has transformed to be more run by a professional and high-end value-added services than by growth of a kind of sweatshop kind of a manufacturing system of activities. So, as this is leading into a situation where Peter Willett said it is no longer possible to regard each country as having its own separate economy. Two of the most fundamental attributes of sovereignty, control over the currency and control over foreign trade, have been substantially diminished. So, there is a situation where the countries are not really able to control these flows. So, the country is and the nation, the government is has become taken a position where it can only facilitate these flows, and they are not in a substantial situation where they can control these activities. So, through this process the multinational organizations and companies have emerged as major players in the way economy acts in today's context. So, what does that mean in impact of FDI on Indian cities? For example, this global building, which what we see here was one of the earliest foreign direct investment in India, and if we see the FDI flow in India, how it has changed over the past 2 decades. During between 1991 and 2008, the foreign direct investment increased by around 260 times, and the two most growth happened during the initial phases. And if we see, the growth was almost 14 times between the 10 years of 1998 to 2008. So what is happening in this context of transforming in terms of social context? So this, if we look at the social composition of the urban areas, because of these changes, what we spoke about in the economic, in the broader economic conditions, this is leading to a whole lot of migration and labor and and how they organize themselves in a city. So this is a photograph of a market space. Markets are the places where the migrants, especially the migrants who are coming from agrarian backgrounds, they come to cities through their own networks, and they try to find a place of work in the cities. So these are the sites of how people migrate and become part of the city. So what happens to the labor composition in a city, and how they shape the overall social composition, and what kind of ethnicities come together, and what kind of systems, social systems and their ideas and living together evolves, is of interest. So at the same time, it is also essential to study the political aspects of transformation which is happening in present context. As Daniel Bell wrote, the nation state is becoming too small for the big problems of life and too big for the small problems of life. This need to be seen in an idea where the importance of the nation and the state in terms of controlling the flows of economy, and therefore the kind of activities, and therefore the development in cities, how it is evolving. So infusion of technology, capital, goods, social, cultural values, people and ideas from far away geographies are influencing to a large extent to the local system. So at the same time, this growing arenas of interaction with the global system is also highly uneven between various sections of the society. So cities, so in political point of view, cities are trying to attract this capital which is coming from the distant territories, and therefore they are trying to make efforts to attract it and use it to the possible extent. So what is happening in terms of spatial form of because of these influences? So the ongoing spatial transformation of cities has shaped the global systems of shaping cities, have made a very considerable changes in existing context. So this is an photograph of Hinjewadi in Pune, where you will see this Hinjewadi area has evolved as a place where a whole lot of these multinational companies who are involved in technology oriented services and involved in global activities have developed as an important center outside the city. So therefore this entire, they are restructuring the urban form into a regionalization of the economy. So most of this new global activities are happening at the regions, and at the same time you also see this layer of this primary activities of which is also coexisting. So this is the kind of contradictions and the kind of the very different systems playing together in a current situation. the city is also becoming a place of global commodification. So, what is happening is that now there is a whole lot of investments coming from distant lands. They sitting there in global distant lands, they project the profits and they set targets for what all to be achieved. So, they operate in a way that they are not really related or loyal to the local context, whereas and also the capital is often impatient and it needs quick results and it expects investments to give immediate return of return, and therefore there is also this element of speculation which becomes an irresistible to any of the business activity. Therefore, the city is becoming a space of speculation and also a space of space which occupies this impatient capital. So, therefore, this act of quickness is there to expect results from investments, and there is this act of trying to impress is happening, and it is also the cities are competing to attract the investments, and especially the local businesses play a key role in that. So, let us take a larger view at it to understand how these forces are playing within this larger urbanization scenario of Indian context. So, in the current Indian context, if we see the way urbanization is happening, the bigger cities play a major role, and they are the spectacles of the change which is happening in current situation as we talk. And what are the major factors which are deciding it? If we see, just to give some idea of what is how these are happening, if we see the concentration of people and the flows, if we see the million plus cities accommodate around 42% of the total urban population in the country. For next 20 years, every day Greater Mumbai needs around 80 houses to accommodate its population growth, and not including the redevelopment or renewal which need to happen in the current buildings. And on the other hand, Bangalore needs around 130 houses every day. In terms of financial flows, Delhi's average income, if we see it, it grew at least 5 times in the last 14 years, and Gurgaon's property doubled every 4 years. And if we see the per capita income of people who average per capita income of people who live in Greater Mumbai and Delhi, and they would be around 3 times that of the national average. So, and if you come on another example of Bangalore has per capita incomes is 3 times that of the state average. So, these are also the factors which is attracting towards these bigger cities. And another factor is that 69% of the FDI is received in this top cities regions. So, let us see the resource flows. What is happening in terms of getting water? To Mumbai and Delhi gets around 2 times that of the class of the amount of water it consumes than the other class 1 towns, and around 3 times that of the class 2 towns, the smaller ones. And the average electricity consumption in these cities are at least 10 times that of the other in the last doubles in every 10 years in the top 10 cities. And also of course the people in the bigger cities are also connected to the internet, and also they are connected. So, then all this happening in a high pace of change, and within the next 20 to 25 years, some of the estimates say that we need to have urban areas almost double to that of what we have today. So, that means almost the 60% of buildings which are going to stand by 2040, which are going to be there by 2040, are yet to be built. That means we are looking at the next 25 years, we are going to build so much of building activity and expansion, urban expansion, that this pace of change is going to be unprecedented. So at the same time, let's look at what is happening at the how the cities are acting as a space for global companies. Alongside the spatial dispersion of economic, as Saskia Sesson said, alongside the spatial dispersion of economic activities and the increased digitizing of the sphere of consumption and entertainment, are growing spatial concentration of a wide range of highly specialized professional activities and control operations, as well as perhaps most unexpectedly a multiplication of low wage jobs and low profit economic sectors. So it is not just the high income and concentration of activities, it is also the low wage jobs and the migration related to it. So this is what happens to the landscape, how this parachute dropped companies, they occupy prime spaces in cities, and they require the sudden eruptions to accommodate themselves. So let's have a look at how this happens in a whole system, how these global spaces locate themselves in a cities. So here it is very important to see how the one leads to each other. Okay. So if we see the on one hand the international companies, they want to expand into local territories, they come they develop their headquarters and their financial centers in certain important business districts can be called as command centers. So they operate in the local areas through these command centers, and they attract whole lot of they provide some kind of high level jobs, and they attract whole lot of high end migration towards it. And then they also provide high end services. They require high end services like businesses, accountants, legal, banking, and then technology partners and others. So and they also conduct businesses with other local businesses, and they also do outsourced back end jobs, as we can see as in with other international locations. And they at the same time they also need services such as transport, catering, maintenance, and whole lot of other services. Therefore each of this their activities in an urban setting, they require some kind of support, whether it is high end or low end or maybe with other businesses. So they make this entire system surrounding themselves, and they in turn also create a whole lot of informal jobs. So these informal jobs, they are attracted to this whole clustering of activities which is happening here, and these informal jobs also lead to migration. So they create this entire agglomeration of activities in one side. At the same time they also need their managers and their professionals to be located in a very high end localities, where with all the exclusive facilities and high end educations and services and recreation, and they need a kind of high end connectivity to it. So this is kind of shaping the way these areas, these high end residential areas are exclusive neighborhoods getting connected to the central business districts. So they require high speed connections, and they irrespective of how the city organizes itself otherwise. And of course they also need a connection to the airports, because the most of the activities are connected through that. So this explains the overall system. Let's go into how they actually happen on ground. This is the an example of a global frontier space, how it gets located in conditions irrespective of what is happening in the local conditions, and they are kind of spaces which they themselves have a kind of create frontiers. So these are clear spaces where, as I said earlier, the state has less control, and these are also the places where these global flows are getting concentrated. So, these are places where this high facilities which are available to converse in the global connections supported by high speed information infrastructure, and they and irrespective of what is happening in the immediate surroundings. So, this is also they implant a visual construct. So, how this the spaces they shape themselves, these frontier spaces they shape themselves such that they create a certain homogeneity and so that it is relatable to the global cities elsewhere. So, this is relating to certain kind of homogenizing cities and making it familiar to their global counterparts. On the other side, these are also new anonymous mass produced landscapes of expansion with dry social meanings, dotted with desperate attention seeking expressions, ubiquitous imitations, and other and often inauthentic for the locals. So, at the same time, as we discussed, this whole lot of informal economy is also evolving. Nearly half of Indian economy GDP is generated from informal enterprises, and about 1 million enterprises do not have a fixed premises of operation. So, this itself explains how the city spaces are getting shaped by this informal economy. So, for example, in Mumbai, the nearly 4% of the people are involved in street hawking and activities who do not have a fixed premises, and these activities really change or the way the certain products are sold and consumed, and also they have the whole lot of dynamics of supporting the various sections who are not able to afford formal means. So, this also serves, it is also studied that the informal economy the informal economy has been growing faster than the formal economic growth, which is supported by the global forces. So, what is happening because of this global forces coming together is also that past and present are mingling together in the same place, juxtapositioned. So, this talking further on this juxtaposition of change and continuity, it is interesting to see that there is always an organically grown system which is in terms of contestation with the globally understandable and organized systems. So, it is also important to note that slow moving cultural change can coexist naturally and more rapidly coexist with the naturally and more rapidly changing events, as quoted by as mentioned by Robert Adam. So, these are also these contestations and coexistence in with this slow changing things are the characteristic of current global cities. So, at the same time, it is very important to understand this informal housing as a part of the development process. If as we discussed that there is a whole lot of migration happening, then this whole lot of housing requirement happening in urban areas, and how the cities are able to provide it. So, that it becomes a major issue. Here I would like to take the example of Mumbai, where an average person who comes into the city and works as a driver, say for example, he earns around say 12,000 rupees. So, that comes up to 3.6 lakhs per year. So, whereas the basic housing unit available in a formal market is around which is the smallest unit, is around 225 square feet, which will be around 40 lakhs. So, that means this average driver who comes to the Mumbai city, he has to work really and to pay this housing, he has to spend at least 50 years, he has to pay the to get this formal housing. So, this is the kind of situation where the formal system is not possible to is not providing, is not able to provide this kind of housing requirement which is happening. So, this is developing a altogether a parallel system of providing shelter for the people. So, it is very important to understand this process with the global forces, because the global disparities, globalization leads to more disparities, and also it attracts a whole lot of the lower income to come here. So, the disparity, while the disparities widen, the availability of resources to accommodate the lower sections are also reduced.